Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo. Hello, everybody. Today we are back and talking about something that we brought up in one of our other episodes when we were talking about chakras and Reiki and assessment tools. The pendulums came up. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what pendulums are, what they do. Some people opt to make their own. You can find them, you can purchase them. There's all different ways to acquire your pendulum. But let's talk a little bit more about what they are. Jen is going to start out this conversation. She actually does a workshop about pendulums and stuff too, so she's pretty familiar with how this all works. Do you want to take it away, Jen?
Of course. So a lot of people have heard of dowsing pendulums and people think it's really out there. It's really woo-woo. They're like, and I will be the first to admit, when I was first introduced to it, I was young. My cousin and a friend of hers were sitting in the bedroom. I was sitting there with them and they were talking to a rock that was tied to a string. And as a kid, I was like, what in the world are you people doing? Like,
Mm.
I really thought that they had lost their marbles. I really did. I was like, how do you think that this is giving you any answers? And they were asking all kinds of questions and they were getting these answers and they were all yes or no. So my brain was going to all these places like, oh, there's a 50-50 chance. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're just making it up. They're asking questions that they know the answers to. And that is where a lot of people go.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in this world long enough to hear other people's stories. And so I kind of want to talk about where pendulums started and how they're used commercially, as well as how they're used personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, if anybody knows anybody who is in the well digging industry, the construction industry, works for the city, on like a crew that does any type of roadside work, or a scientist, those are all places that pendulums get used.
I'm glad
So,
you brought that up because I know in one of our very early episodes when we were talking to Jill Goo about
mhm.
dowsing, and
Yep.
we didn't talk a lot about what that is, and
Yeah.
that would be interesting for people to know that it's not just all crazy made up stuff. People actually use this in a practical work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been used for years. And when Jill brought it up, she was actually talking about, I don't remember if it was her dad or her grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
used to douse to find, I think it was to find wells. Um, and I might be wrong on that. I know
it
that
was
he
it was
worked,
maybe
it was,
pipeline or something. Yeah.
oh, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So water sources. And so, like, clockmakers use them. I mean, we all see the pendulum in the clock and how that works. You just kind of take it for granted that that's a pendulum too. But so clockmakers use it. Well diggers are the people that I've heard use it the most,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they can actually tap into um, like water movement, like the energy. The pendulum will pick up on the energy of the movement of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they can find the depth of the water, they can find where the water actually is. So people have all this big giant equipment to come in and find these places where the wells are, really fancy expensive equipment, and then somebody will walk in who's super old school with something on a string. It can be
Mm-hmm.
anything as long as it's weight on the end of that string. They'll just walk in and they'll be like, oh, dig right here. And sure enough, they'll bring in the big equipment, they'll check everything out because, of course, they don't believe them a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, how the heck did this person know this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're using the energy. They're using the interaction that, I mean, it's movement. So as soon as you hit a space that the energy is moving differently, you're going to get a reaction in the pendulum. So going back a little bit, pendulums are simply a weighted item that's suspended from a fixed point. So you have a string. Here, actually, I have pendulums right in front of me. You have a string, you have a weighted item, and it can swing freely.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what a pendulum is. It's been used for decades by tons of different professions, like I said. We're going to talk more about spiritual dowsing today instead of the commercial use for dowsing, which I just talked a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
But the spiritual use for dowsing is specifically to find energy and stagnation within energy fields and the environment around you. As well as you can use it to find lost items, you can use it to connect with your spirits, your angels, your guides. You can use it for all of these lovely things. Um, Tammy, have you used pendulums before?
I have. And I was at one of your workshops to make my own.
Hmm.
So I first was introduced to a pendulum when I was in massage school and we were talking about energy work. That was actually one of the major turning points for the way that I opened my mind to different things. Because as I've mentioned before, I was very intimidated by it and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was very skeptical
Hmm.
about any of this. And when we were assessing each other's chakras, the teacher had some pendulums for us to use so we could just, kind of play around with them and figure out what we could see, what it would do. And the first time holding one and it starts to move on its own, you're like, what is this weird voodoo that's happening? And then you start to wonder, like, am I moving it? Am I breathing on it? Like all of these different things, you start to kind of try to think like what you would consider
Yeah,
logically based on your
yeah,
previous information.
yeah.
And then you start to realize, especially when I was using it as a chakra assessment tool, that it was moving differently depending on where I was. And I knew I was not moving my hand. And then we also, when we tried it on each other, and, we'd kind of peek when someone was using it on us, it was really interesting to see how things are moving. So the last couple weeks ago when we were talking about chakras, and I was saying how sometimes you can see that they are not moving very much, or they're moving a lot, or they're moving the wrong way, or whatever the case may be. That was all stuff that I learned how to assess with a pendulum. Now, that being said, I never had one that I made myself until I went to your workshop, which I really enjoyed because I felt like I could pick things that seemed like they really wanted to work with me, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And in your class, I also learned more about the different things you could ask pendulums and stuff like that. I not that long ago was introduced even to these like little boards that you can probably make them yourself, but you can also buy them, that you can ask a question and it has different letters and stuff on it so the pendulum can answer. And I actually had a friend who had a really interesting experience recently. She owns a crystal shop. She's a lovely person who I hope will come talk to us someday. But she was kind of in a position with her little business where she's like, okay, I really want to partner with someone. I don't know how this is all going to work. And, you go through these cycles in business where you start to really wonder if you're even heading the right direction or what's going to happen. So she was
Yeah.
asking her pendulum, she's like, okay, when is the help coming? When is this partnership coming? And her pendulum told her April. So I was present when she kind of in this roundabout way met this other gal who was also looking for a partnership and to work out of her space. And this gal was like, I knew that you'd be coming. And I didn't know when you were going to get here, but I knew you'd be coming. My friend's like, oh my God, I knew someone was coming in April. It was just like the coolest thing. But it was super interesting because I had only ever used it to either assess chakras or, answer simple like yes or no things. I had never actually used one of those boards to like spell things out. And it's funny because I think most people who are not familiar would probably be like, is this some weird like Ouija board thing?
Hmm. Yep.
But it's not. It's not even close to that. I don't even know how I feel about Ouija boards, but pendulums don't feel that way to me. They feel very authentic, because when you're holding it yourself and you know you're not doing anything
Yep.
and you can ask a question and it will make a specific movement, it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you brought up massage school and using them in massage school. So, like I said, when I was a kid, I thought my cousin and her friend were nutso. And when I went to massage school, I was 18, and my instructor, who actually teaches like internationally, teaches massage stuff, he handed me this book, and it was Dowsing for Beginners. And he said, Jen, I really think that you'll like this. And I don't think I was even a student anymore. I think I was on the advisory board at the time for the massage program. And I came in to get a massage from some of the students. And he's like, Jen, I really think you'd like this book. And this was before I was out of the woo closet at all. Like, and I honestly was probably still like doubting a lot of the woo-ness in my life anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he hands me this book, and I was like, Dowsing for Beginners, what is this? And it was probably, I think that was 8 or 9 years after my first experience with pendulums. And I got home and I opened the book. I just opened randomly. And the first thing that it has a picture of a rock on a string. And I was like, oh, good Lord, this is back. Like, and so I started reading this book and I was like, there's actually legit science behind this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this makes sense. And then I went through a whole guilt thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought my cousin was a nut. And like, I went through this whole process of, oh my gosh, I was really judgmental about this.
I'm
And
sure they
so
forgave you for thinking it was
I don't even
crazy.
know that they remember doing this when I was a kid. But so I went through a whole phase where it's like, okay, I got to learn about this. Like, I need to
Mm-hmm.
understand this. And the fact that my instructor gave me this book to read is just a little bit, it's a little bit crazy to me.
Right.
And the fact that that was the page that I opened to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so when I started reading that book, I was hooked because it was really interesting to me to see that there was actually science behind it and that
Mm-hmm.
people had been using it for so long to find water and to find pipelines, metal, things that were hidden. It's you can use it as a metal detector, you can find lost things with it. And so there's so many different theories about how pendulums actually work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk a little bit about those because I think it's interesting.
Yes, please.
So there are some people that think when you are using your pendulum that your pendulum is actually tied to an angel or a specific guide or another entity who is actually controlling the pendulum. So there's a lot of people who think that if you have a pendulum, that pendulum has a name because it's tied to another being, and
Okay.
they're the ones who are answering. Um, so when you ask a question, you're actually interacting with other etheric beings
Mm-hmm.
in that theory. And so it's said that it's energetically connected. Um, their energy is energetically connected to the pendulum to elicit the response.
Sure.
So it's an external source.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different theories that some are externally motivated and some that are internally motivated. So this is what's so interesting to me because I've had interactions with the pendulum that sometimes I am asking my guides, sometimes I am asking the angels to step forward, and they'll help assist in the movement. Um, and other times I'm asking for a much more internal response. So like there's what I call the universal truth theory, where every person, every being innately knows what the universal truth is. We all have the answers to all things. And so when we're using our pendulum, our body and our energy field and our nervous system is actually responding to what we know universally and moving the pendulum. So
Mm-hmm.
you talked about, I know that I wasn't moving it, but we do have small, minute movements based on our nervous system and based on the tension within our body. So even if we're not consciously moving it, subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
we are connected to those knowings and we could be moving it at a subconscious level. So I've had experiences where I've watched other people use their pendulum and I'm like, oh, their hand is definitely moving, like when I was in my very skeptical phase.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have now recognized that, you know what, their hand might be moving, but it's not moving because they're specifically saying, oh, I want it to say yes, oh, I want it to say whatever. I can't even make it do
Yeah, I
like
was just gonna say, I don't know that you could force it to give you a different answer. Um,
um I think you can. Like, if you really, really, really wanted to
that
move your
seems
hand
like
in
it would
that way,
totally defeat the purpose if you really were trying
yes,
to force an answer
yes,
that much.
yes,
Because what's the point of even asking if you're trying to force a specific response?
yeah, yeah. Um, I have seen like so when people are testing it out, they'll specifically move it in a direction. And like you can see how my hand is moving right now, like to
Mm-hmm.
make it move. When you're doing the pendulum just normally, like I'm gonna ask it to do my yes response.
So I'm gonna
So,
narrate
like,
this a little bit for the
okay.
people who aren't watching.
Yes, thank
So
you.
initially, Jen, she's holding a pendulum, which is just a chain string,
Yep.
with it looks like metal,
Yep.
a metal piece attached to it.
Yep.
So when she first picked it up, she was kind of moving her hand, forcing it to do a specific thing. Well, now she's just kind
Yep.
of resting her hand and she's asking for a specific response,
Yep.
which you can train your pendulum to give
Yes.
you a specific movement for yes, a specific movement for no. So you can basically ask when you start to connect with it, what does your yes look like? What does your no look like? So she's asking it for a yes, which is
Yes.
starting to move it
So,
in a circular.
so my circular motion is my waiting for a response motion. So
Okay.
my maybe or my waiting for a response, or sometimes it will say, I'm not telling you. So it will just do that response. So my yes is actually like back and forth. So toward me and away from me. And that's
Okay.
what it's doing right now. But if you go back and watch this, for those who are just listening, you'll notice that my hand is much more steady right now. I'm not actually moving to get this response. It's doing it on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which this is where people are a little bit floored. My arm's getting tired holding that up like that, so I'm going to put it down. This is where people are a little bit floored because you can, like I did at the beginning, like force it to do that. Like you can see that my hand is moving much more forcing this, and it's not as smooth of a movement with the pendulum. Like you can see the pendulum is like
No.
being violently moving. Like it's really hard to get a smooth movement if you're forcing it. And
Right.
when you start using the pendulum yourself, it's those small things that make you go, "Oh, I get it now."
Mm-hmm.
So I would urge people to either go out and find a pendulum. You can get them from crystal stores, rock stores, metaphysical stores. Crystal stores and rock stores are usually the same. I don't know why that came out of my mouth like that, but um, or you can make your own. One of the things that I talk about in the workshop is you can use a necklace. Like if you have a necklace that has like a little bit of weight to it, you can take your necklace off and you can just hold that and use that.
Mm.
Um, so you can use metal, you can use, a lot of people will use crystals. I have a crystal one here. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know where my very favoriteest one in the whole entire world went. I wanted to use that one today to show everybody, but I don't know where it is. So I have a crystal that a friend of mine dug in Arkansas, and she turned it into a pendulum and gave it to me. And
Cool.
so you can use chain, you can use string, you can use rope, you can use whatever you want, and then tie something heavy to the bottom of it. Or you can use your necklace. Um, or you can go and get a fancy pendulum if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can use beads. Any of those things will work as long as it is free moving, um, weight on the end of a string or some type of rope. But I would say go and try it out. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you feel it in your hand and you feel the movement and you know that you are not forcing it to move,
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different ballgame.
Right. I do honestly credit that as a big turning point in my perspective. And then, right, like later on, being able to kind of marry the ideas that I had that felt very logical, scientific based to the idea that this wasn't necessarily illogical
Yep.
and that it all made sense. It opened my mind a lot. And the idea of it moving because of sensing a flow or a movement of energy, it makes sense for finding water. It makes sense for assessing chakras. I mean, anytime there's going to be any movement like that, that totally makes sense that it would be able to pick up on that.
Yep. Yep.
But that was, yeah, that was a major turning point. And I like that you can use anything. I really did enjoy the process of making my own,
Yeah.
because it would be cool if you got into a little bit more about the idea of having a pendulum that you kind of train to yourself,
Yep.
versus something that is trained to other people, so you communicate with it better.
Yeah, definitely. I will throw these two other things out there before I go into that,
Mm-hmm.
just because I want to make sure that I'm going over all the different theories about how to use pendulums.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two other theories that I usually teach to. The one I touched on a little bit, which is your subconscious mind. So not only do we have the universal truth one where we know all things, there's a subconscious mind one. So typically, if we're asking a question, we already know the answer to it. Like in our heart, we know what we want the answer to be or what would be best for us. So again, kind of like the universal truth theory, subconscious mind is your subconscious mind is controlling and moving the pendulum to give you the response that you know, innately know what is best for you.
Sure.
Um,
Well, it kind of goes back to the when we had our hypnotist Angie, when we were talking to her too, because she was talking about how much our subconscious mind knows, but we don't necessarily have access to in our conscious mind unless we
yes.
bridge the gap. So that makes sense too.
Exactly. Exactly. And I love that you just said bridge the gap because the last theory that I talk about is the right brain, left brain theory. So, what the pendulum does is it gives us a focal point. It gives us something to focus our energy on and focus our attention on. And so, when people start using a pendulum, they're actually focusing just on this pendulum. I'm holding the pendulum in front of me just to give myself a focal point. But so when you start focusing all of your attention in one spot, your left brain and your right brain starts to work together because they are so focused on this one thing. So it brings your logical brain and your creative brain together. And when you are working from that space of balance and when you're working from that cohesive connection, you actually are using all of your brain power to resolve and solve a problem. So when you are asking a specific question, not only are you getting the logical pieces coming forward, but you're getting the creative pieces coming forward to give you this response to the question that you've asked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with that, I always tell people to pay attention to what pops into their head when they're using their pendulum, because most people, I will say all people, are intuitive. All people have abilities to sense and feel
Mm-hmm.
extrasensory perception. And typically, when you are this focused and you start using tools like this, you'll get other input. You'll start to get psychic input. You'll get guidance that if you're paying attention and you're listening, it's not only the response that you're getting from your pendulum, but it's the response that you're getting from the energies outside of yourself and within
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a more complete picture if you are focused and listening.
You know what's interesting? I've been using this little trick for a while now that seems to work really well, but it reminds me of this. So, some of my clients that are really like highly sensitive,
Hmm.
people who maybe have experienced trauma, people who have a lot of anxiety, have a hard time kind of winding down on the table or experience a lot of sensitivity when I work on them. I have a little flat marble stone that I use sometimes for cold therapy on people. But what I've been doing for them is I put it right between their brows, kind of on their third eye when they're laying on their back. And I tell them, because also, too, when you see people are starting to get a little stressed out, even if they're not showing it in their body, a lot of times they furrow their brow.
Hmm.
So I tell people if this helps to give you enough of a focal point to be able to kind of pull yourself out of the intensity of the moment and calm down a little bit, concentrate on the stone. It works really well for some people, and some people who are more open about this with me will tell me afterwards that they experience a lot of things having to do with intuition, their third eye. Sometimes they experience like seeing shapes and colors. Sometimes they're understanding where I am on their body because they're seeing a color that associates with the chakra. Sometimes they're feeling other support in the room. It's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
But as you explained that, I was like, yeah, that does make a lot of sense too. That just focusing your energy when you're in that like calm state of mind and focusing your energy.
Hmm.
are you are you helping yourself with the stone
I
now
was
too?
like, if you think that I should put a calming stone on my head, I'm going to do that because I'm like, I need some calm lately.
What's really interesting too is so my husband is one of the people who has a hard time through various traumas in his life. He had a really hard time connecting with himself, his like physical body. And through a lot of therapy and stuff like that, the therapist did suggest him trying to do more massage. So he's one of them actually that works really well on. But last time we did that, he told me when I took it off of him, it was almost like I was pulling something out of his head. He's
Yeah.
like, it just felt like it was kind of part of me. Like it
Yeah.
was stuck to me. I was like, I don't know that it was ready to let you go yet.
Yeah.
It was
The
kind of
first
interesting.
the first stone I put on my head was like a golden healer and it just went and like completely opened everything. And I was like, oh, that's not calming. That's not calming. Put a different one on.
That's the opposite of what I want right
Yes.
now.
So I put some jet on my forehead, which jet is very calming and grounding and lovely. So, um, so for those of you who are listening and not seeing, I am holding a stone to my head right now because because I'm goofy
Because
like
why
that.
not?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to put it down so that I can actually talk with my hands like I do.
Yeah.
Um, so you asked about training your pendulum. And so one of the things that I think is very, very important is that when people go and they pick out a pendulum, or if they make their own, which I would recommend if you have the ability to make your own because you're placing your energy into the stones or
Mm-hmm.
into the components of that pendulum. So with every piece, you are setting the intention that it is interacting with you and your energy, and you're setting the intention that it is going to be a focal point and an energetic resonance with you.
Mm-hmm.
So so every single piece, every single component has your energy in it, has your intentions in it. Um, so if you can make one, I would say make one. If you can't, or you just don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
some people just don't want to. Um, when you do go and purchase one, I always tell people clear it first. There are many ways you can clear it. You can use different smudges, you can use salt, you can
Explain what a
set it
smudge
out.
is for everybody.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So smudging is like using sage or sweetgrass or Palo Santo wood, burning it. The smoke will help you clear. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually collects all of the energy that you don't want settled into an item or into your space, and it will bring it up away to the ethers so that it can be transmuted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
So
did
you
that
said smudging, salt. I've heard that washing in water can be super effective too.
Yes, but um, there are certain stones. that do not react well to water or
Oh,
certain
got it.
minerals. So
Yeah,
if you have anything that's in the salt family or is very porous, do not do that.
got it.
So I would say like kyanite. Um, if it's polished, it's a little bit more durable, but if it's
Yeah,
not
that's really
polished,
kind of
don't do
flaky.
that.
Selenite
Yes.
too.
Like
Yeah.
me, a little bit flaky. Selenite. Some people will actually use salt, like so same thing that you would use in a salt lamp, things like that. Some people will use that. Um, so some of those are more porous. A lot of them are in the same mineral family as
Hmm.
salt. Um, and they will over time deteriorate if you wash water over them.
Got it.
Um,
What
so
about moon bathing? I don't know a lot about that, but people talk about that too.
yes. So you can sunbathing actually charges things. Moonbathing clears the energy.
Isn't there some
Um,
stones that aren't supposed to be in the sun though?
yes. And I
Okay.
typically, so there are some stones that do really well in indirect light.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe I can look up, maybe we can talk about this at a different time, like what stones do
Hmm.
well
I
where.
mean, we could have
Um,
several episodes on stones.
yes, yes, and we should. We
Yes.
should. Um, then I can pull out all my stones and show all the people and like whoever we have
Yes.
come to talk about it. It would be lovely. Um, but so a lot of the time I'll put things in indirect light. So I'll put them in a place that they're still going to be out in the sunlight. They're still going to be getting the energy from the sun.
Hmm.
Um, but I'll put them in like a little bit more shaded place,
Hmm.
or I will put a cloth over them.
Oh, okay.
Um, Especially if you have something that
So they're
has
still
really,
getting
really
the
rich color.
energy from
Yes.
the sun,
Yes.
just not sitting in the sun
Yeah.
directly. And I
Yeah.
know that you said the moon bathing is more for the clearing piece of
Hmm.
it. Um,
Yep.
that makes sense. Also, I have in my experience with like hot stone massage and stuff like that, that returning stones to the earth, to the dirt, can be very
Yes.
beneficial for them too, which totally
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people will actually have a pot of either sand or dirt in their home. If they're worried. I used to live in a place that was very wooded, and I put a whole bunch of healing stones and crystals out in the woods. And unfortunately, animals thought they were eggs
Oh
and
no!
took them.
Oh
So we
no!
had a bunch of hawks and other animals. And I went out there one day and almost all of my like larger crystals were gone.
Oh
And I was
no!
like, oh my gosh. And we found a few of them scattered all over the yard. I'm
Once
sure
the
the
animals
hawks
are like,
came
"What
down.
is
They're
this?"
like, this is not working. And there were a couple that had like peck marks on them. Like they were, yeah. So I will say if you do put things outside, make sure that they're protected, well
Hmm.
protected, especially if you live somewhere that has animals. But if you don't want to risk that, you can certainly put the crystals in a pot of dirt within the house.
Hmm.
Um, and you're going to get the same effects because you're getting the earth, the grounding energy
Hmm.
from the soil.
And make sure
Um,
it's soil that's being taken care of, because just like anything
yes.
else, it can be stagnant if you're not
Yes.
taking care of
Yes.
it. It's helpful when there's a plant or it's watered, or stuff like
Yep.
that in it, so it's active
Yep.
and can do that nice reciprocal energy with the stones.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. There are a few stones that are toxic to plants. So just be careful if they have like really high mineral content of certain minerals.
Oh, so
Um,
so nothing can leach off of it. That
yes.
makes sense.
So like one of the stones that I always tell people to be careful with energetically is malachite. So it's a green stone that has like whitish
Hmm.
bands on it. That stone, when it's broken, can be um, chemically toxic.
Okay.
So same with selenite and like your salt
Hmm.
minerals. A lot of the time, those you wouldn't want to stick in your plants unless it's a plant that does well with sodium and different. But in high concentrations, sometimes that can affect plants. So just be careful with your plants. Know
Okay.
what you're putting in your pots.
Sure.
Um, for the most part, you're okay, but like I said, there's a few that I wouldn't do that with.
Which,
Um,
thankfully, in the age of Google, it's probably not that hard of a search to figure out if it's toxic for your plants or not, which is
yes,
nice.
yes, yes. I would also say if you have animals in your household, anything that is a salt base, be careful leaving that out in your house because animals like to lick salt
Oh, yeah,
and
I didn't even think about that.
it can be toxic for their kidneys and their livers. So like especially if you have like a Himalayan salt lamp, things like that, just be careful with your animals. So if you are clearing your stones and you have like I used to have a bowl of salt that I would put out. And not only would that clear the air and clear the environment, I would throw my stones in there at the end of the day and it would clear those. But
That
I
reminds
found
me, we should talk about halotherapy, salt therapy one of these times too. I
that
made
would
a
be
note.
awesome. Thank you. But you have to be careful because if you have an open bowl of salt, sometimes your animals will be like, "Oh my gosh, what is this? It's like a buffet." And then they go and they lick it and yeah, so
Yeah.
just be careful when you're doing any type of clearing practice. Make sure that you know like how your animals, your plants are going to interact with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that is the first thing that I would say with your pendulum. If you are buying it somewhere else or if you are making it with components, make sure everything is cleared before
Mm-hmm.
you start using your pendulum. And then when you do have your pendulum, I'm going to do this, but I typically would do this down in front of me, but I'm going to do it up in front of the screen and we are going to narrate what to do. But so typically you would be holding the pendulum. There's several different ways you can hold a pendulum. If you want to know more about that, put it in the comments and I will make a separate video for that if anybody is interested. But so you're going to ask your pendulum to give you a yes response. So like right now, I just asked my pendulum to give me a yes response and it is going away from me and toward me. Um, so for me, that is my yes response. Not everybody has the same yes response.
Mm-hmm. Mine's
Some
a circle.
people yeah, some people have a circle, some people it goes diagonally, some people it goes side to side. It just is based on your energy. There is no wrong answer. As long as you have trained and asked your pendulum to show you what that response is, it's going to be your response every time.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would ask for a yes response. Then I would also ask for a no response. So my no response is side to side. Um, I'm very unsteady with my hand up in the air like this. So for those who are watching, like this is much harder for me when I'm my hand is kind of up at my
Well,
head
you're kind
level
of,
instead of
yeah, I was just going to say you're holding it practically above your head.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So typically I would be down here and I'm going to get a much better response from it when it's down in front of me because I'm not trying to steady my arm
right?
while it's above my head.
Your arm isn't
Um,
shaking. Yeah.
So for me, my no response is side to side.
Mm-hmm.
And so my pendulum is going to tell me that. And then I will ask it to show me what my either non response or my maybe response is. So a non response would be, well, for some people, non response would be, I'm refusing to answer you. I'm not giving you the answer to that because you're not going to listen to it anyway. That's usually what happens with me. Like, my guides, my subconscious, whatever I'm asking right at the moment, if it is known that I am not going to listen to the response that comes through, which happens, I will admit it, I'm a little bit stubborn. My pendulum will just say, "Nope, we're not responding." So,
We're not playing
so
this game with you, Jen.
yep, yep, you're not going to listen anyway, so we're just going to walk away. So in that situation, like if it's known that I'm not going to pay attention, my pendulum just won't respond at all. Um, if it's a maybe response, or if it's a, you're not ready for this answer right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'll get a circle.
Okay.
Um, so those are responses if you're asking specific questions, yes or no. Um, But there's also responses that would show up if you're doing healing work. So I also use my pendulum for healing work. So you can use your pendulum for clearing your chakras. You can use it for clearing the energy of trauma in specific areas of the body. So let's say you injured your knee. You can hold the pendulum over your knee and ask for healing energy to be placed into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you would typically ask for your pendulum to show you how much energy is currently flowing through that area, and it will start to spin. Typically, for doing healing work, you're going to get circles.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get circles. Not everybody gets that same response. So, again, check your response. Ask your pendulum, because this is about your interaction with your pendulum. It's not, I'm going to tell my pendulum what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're giving your pendulum energy, and your pendulum is giving answers and energy back. So it's a flow. Um, so for me, when I'm doing healing work, it will typically give me circles over the chakras to tell me like how much energy is flowing through that area in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it will also show me like if a chakra is flowing in the opposite direction than it typically would. So with people, as we talked last week, everybody has a flow of energy that is their own. They have their own energetic signature pattern. And so for one person, all of your chakras might spin in like clockwise direction. Other people, it might be counterclockwise. So doing an assessment when you're doing any type of energy work with them and checking the majority of their chakras to
Mm-hmm.
see which direction, and you can even ask, which direction does this person typically flow when they are completely open and receiving? Um, so starting with that question, finding out, and then checking the chakras, you'll see, okay, if it's going in a circle that's only like a dollar coin size or smaller, you know that that's the starting point. You can ask for healing energy to be sent to that area and then
Mm-hmm.
check again and see how it's flowing. Typically, you'll see a response almost immediately where it starts to open and that circle starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, People typically respond really well to any type of therapy where you're using a tool that they can see the response.
Mm-hmm.
So people are curious. So a lot of the time when I'm using my pendulum, I'll see my clients open their eyes,
And peek because they want
like
to
just
know.
peek.
Yeah.
Like I want to see. So sometimes I will tell people, "Hey, I'm going to use the pendulum. If you want to look, go for it." Like
Mm-hmm.
just because I know that they're curious. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they'll just lay there with their eyes closed and they're like, "I really want to open them, but I can't." It's like a kiddo on Christmas. Like yeah, so pendulums can be used in a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Super
Um,
useful too after we talked about chakras and explained more about it, ways that people can do some self care.
yep,
Because if you have a pendulum or you're curious and you go and get a pendulum and you try this stuff, you can also assess your own chakras and you can ask
yes.
for assistance with
Yep.
those chakras, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So looking at the chakras, I know that we're coming closer to the end of this episode, but looking at chakras for yourself, like you can actually use your pendulum, you can hold it over your own chakras and see how open you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can use that to assess like where you are at. I'm just kind of holding this in front of or over certain chakras in my system and looking to see um if I'm spinning in the same direction, um if it stops. So you just bring your pendulum over your head and then come down in front of you in front of each
Mm-hmm.
chakra
And if
and
you
just
haven't
watch.
listened to those episodes yet, we have
Yes.
two episodes that talk a little more in depth about each chakra so you can get an idea of where they are. There's also a ton of, I mean, if you just Google a chakra chart, you'll find a ton of information on that too, where you can
Yep.
actually see where they all are so you'll know where to put your pendulum.
Yep. Yep. But like I said, you can also do that over any area of injury to
Mm-hmm.
see how much energy is flowing through a specific spot and see, like, if you're doing other healing modalities, see if it changes after you use a specific
Mm,
healing modality.
that's a
Um,
good idea.
you can also use it to assess, um, If you're taking supplements, you can use your
Mm-hmm.
pendulum and ask, is this supplement for my highest and best good?
Mm-hmm.
Um, is this beneficial for me?
You
Um,
can even
you,
ask, should I take this right now? Because sometimes I find that if I'm not getting a very clear answer, if I ask a more specific question,
yep,
like, should I take this today, right now? It gives
yep,
a more clear answer. So if I ever have a question about anything I'm taking, I get a clear answer that way.
yeah. So I will say, I always make sure that when you are asking questions of your pendulum, ask if it's for your highest good.
Okay.
Um, because asking, like, should I do this right now? Um, we can get a response that is very much like, I feel like I should
Mm-hmm.
because I've been trained to believe that this
Oh,
is going to be good for
like we
me.
could potentially
So,
override it. That
yes,
makes sense.
because we do have our ego that is in there as well. But so asking questions about if it's for your highest good, would be good. You can also do dosing.
Okay.
When people are taking herbal supplements,
Mm.
there are some people who use their pendulum for dosing, and you ask very specific questions, very specific numbers on how much you should be taking and how many of, like, if you have a pill, how many of this you should be taking. I would say make sure that you are consulting a physician or an herbalist or
Yes.
somebody when you are doing dosing. I'm just simply saying that this is a use that some people
Mm-hmm.
do use. Some people who do herbal medicine, some people who do microdosing actually use a pendulum for their assessments and for their dosing. Um, there's other people who use the body as a pendulum for
Mm-hmm.
dosing. So the arm can be used, it's applied kinesiology. That's a form of dowsing. So it's using the body as a pendulum instead of using a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, can be used for dosing. It can also be used for finding things that you've lost, which people love this one. So I always tell people if you've lost something in your house and you cannot find it, or if you lost something when you were out walking, pull out a map or draw a map of that area and hold your pendulum over it and say, is it in this part of the map? Like draw it into quadrants. So, like you have A1, A2,
Mm-hmm.
A3, B1, B2, B3. Is it in quadrant A1? Look for a yes or no response. Is it in quadrant? Like just keep asking.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are really good and can go just like hold the pendulum over the map and go like back and forth across the map and wait for a response. I don't do well with that because I'm a little bit more impatient and I'm like, okay, A1, B3, like where is this thing? Um, and so you can use it that way. I do know some people who have used it to find their kiddos when their kiddos haven't come
Wow.
home on time.
Okay.
Um,
It's better than find my
so
friends.
yes. Yeah. So it can be used that way. Trying to think if there's anything else. It can also be used for, like I said, finding water, finding wells,
Mm-hmm.
to dig wells on properties, or if somebody is looking for where they should be building their home on a property, asking the question, where would it be most beneficial for me to place my home on this land?
Mm-hmm.
And again, either going over a map or walking the land and waiting for a response. Um, so
There's
those are,
many, many ways that we can use
yes,
pendulums, which
yes.
is really awesome because there's a lot of things that I think people will, who maybe haven't used a pendulum, will be sold on if they try
Mhm.
it
Yep.
because they'll be surprised how much information you can really get with your pendulum, which is
Yeah.
the whole reason we're having this conversation because pendulums are awesome.
Yes, they are. Tammy, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm certain since we plan on doing this podcast for a while, if you did, we'll talk about it again another time.
Yes. if anybody else sees anything that they have questions on or that I missed, please, please, please put it in the comment section and we can touch on that again. Like I said, if you guys want to know how to clear or train or whatever, put it in the comments. I'm more than happy to share any information that is in my noggin to help everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that information with us, and we
of
hope
course.
to see you guys all next week.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.